societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
They loaded us on boxcars.
We were packed like sardines in that boxcar. No food or water on the 4-day trip to Bad Orem.
There's no invasion. No one wants to invade the United States.
Today in the White House, we have perhaps the worst and most dangerous president in the history of our country.
He has no idea what he's talking about.
This president is the worst that I've ever seen.
Where were you in 2017 when we had the worst president in the history of the United States?
He has no idea what he's talking about.
I would even argue that he is the worst after 1 year because of what other presidents oversaw.
Donald Trump is the worst strategist in the history of the American presidency.
I don't know what the president is talking about.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, Brian Fisher here, the program Focal Point, home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio, and I am your congenial, convivial, and amiable and effervescent host, as always.
You sure came out of the chute good. I mean, but then you fell off that Bronco right away.
Yeah, well, you know, live radio, you're walking the high bar, sometimes you just fall right off and land on your fanny. That was it. So, anyway, glad to have you in the conversation. I'm one of those things. I'm convenial or convivial. I don't know, one of the two in there. Anyway,
Everfest.
Everfest.
I can't even say that.
Yeah, see,
it's contagious.
It's contagious. I got you on
this. It's contagious.
Like, it reminds me of a story about this manager in minor league baseball. They had a guy who was terrible left fielder, and he just kept miscuing balls, misplaying them, balls that go over his head. He dropped a fly ball, and he finally told the guy, like, he benched him. He said, "I'm going to go out and play left field. I've had it with you. I'm going to go play it." So the first guy hits a fly ball to the guy to the left field of the coach, and he drops it. And he comes into the dugout, and he points at the guy, and he says, "You have messed up left field so bad that nobody can play it." So, anyway, that's my excuse, and I am sticking to it. So anyway, let's turn our attention to the Word of God as we begin the program today. We use a schedule you can find at pray.afa.net. We're in the Psalms. We're in a section in the Psalms where David, it's a great section to meditate on and to ponder and to read and to pray back to God when you're in desperate circumstances, because David, all the way through this section of the Psalms, in the 50s and in the 60s, he's finding himself in one kind of desperate situation after another, and we can model his prayers. His prayers become a model for us when we're in similar situations. And we'll see in a moment that we need to look at these two Psalms together, Psalm 70 and 71. They probably belong together. Psalm 70 ends with David's prayer request, but we don't know if God answered it. 71 provides an answer to that. So David's in a situation where he was desperate. And he told God, "Look, I don't have time to be patient and wait for you to work. I need help, and I need it now." That's why he says in verse 1 of Psalm 70, "Make haste, O God, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me." And then he says later down in verse 5, "I am poor and needy. Hasten to me, O God." So hurry up, he says. I'm dying here. I need some help. Do not delay. Now, apparently he had people in his life that were actually seeking to kill him. It says in verse 2, "They seek my life." So maybe things aren't quite that desperate for us, but we may have people in our lives that we know do not like us. They don't want the best for us. We can sense and feel their hostility, and we know that it wouldn't bother them if we suffered a little bit. Maybe even if we suffered a lot, they might even enjoy that. And here's what David says in verse 2, "Let them," his enemies that wanted to take his life, "let them be turned back and brought to dishonor who desire my hurt." And again, as we've talked, it's appropriate to pray that way. You have people that are making your life miserable without cause, It's entirely appropriate to pray that God is the judge of the living and dead, the judge of all the earth, that he would intervene and bring justice about on your behalf. Now, David was feeling pretty vulnerable in this situation, vulnerable and weak, because these people were in a position to do him damage, cause him some pain, and he felt it. And, he says, I look around and everybody around me seems to be doing fine, but I feel weak and vulnerable like people are after me. And he says in verse 5, I am poor and needy, weak and vulnerable. So if you feel that way here, do what David did. He fixes his eyes on God in the midst of his weakness. He lifts his eyes off of his weakness and fixes it on God's strength. And he says to God in verse 5, you are my help and my deliverer. So that's how Psalm 70 ends. Psalm 71, we find, gives the answer to the prayer that David prayed. We find that Psalm 71 opens, he's still writing from a situation where he is in desperate need of God's strength and deliverance. He says in verses 1 through 4, in you, O Lord, do I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, deliver me and rescue me. Incline your ear to me and save me. Remember one time when Debbie was teaching, she taught third grade when we first started dating and got married, and there was and we had a mutual friend who was a pastor, and his kid was a student in the school where Debbie taught. And one day his dad came to school, and the boy was there, and he ran up to David, and David was talking, having adult conversations, and he tugged on his dad's coat and says, Daddy, come down here, Daddy. He wanted him to incline his ear to his cry, and that's what David is doing, tugging on the father's coat and saying, come down here, Father, I need to speak with you. Be to me a rock of refuge, he says, to which I may continually come. You have given the command to save me, for you are my rock and my fortress. Rescue me, O my God, from the hand of the wicked, from the grasp of the unjust and cruel man. So he realized he needed God to be his rescuer, even when he wasn't old enough or smart enough to realize it. He realized that he needed God to be his refuge, and that God was his refuge while he was still in the womb. Children, pregnancies miscarry all the time. The womb is not necessarily a safe place for a developing baby. You hope it'd be a safe place, at least from the abortionist knife, but miscarriages happen, and David says, I realized I needed God's protection even when I wasn't even born, even before I was born. So he says in verses 5 and 6, for you, O Lord, this is one of the great pro-life verses in the Bible, for you, O Lord, are my hope, my trust, O Lord, from my youth. Upon you I have leaned. Listen to this. Upon you I have leaned from before my birth. You are he who took me from my mother's womb. Now notice he didn't say, you took a blob of tissue that became me from my mother's womb. He says, you took me. That was me in the womb that you took. That was me in my mother's womb, not something that turned into me at some point. Now, as we get toward the end of the psalm, we realize that David is writing this toward the end of his life. He's older. He survived a lifetime of close calls. He says to God in verse 7, you are still my strong refuge. And then he appeals to God in his senior years, do not cast me off in the time of old age, forsake me not when my strength is spent. So he had people that were making false accusations against him, even at his age, repeating those accusations to other people, trying to hurt him, trying to damage his reputation, make his life difficult. Maybe that's an experience that you have had if you're a golden ager. But his hope remained steadfast in God, even at the end of his life. I will hope continually, he says, in you. Verse 17, O God, from my youth you have taught me, so even to old age and gray hairs, O God, do not forsake me, until I proclaim your might to another generation, your power to all those who come. So you may be in a situation as a senior citizen where some of the things that you're used to depending on, maybe family, you don't have family around, you're feeling a little infirm, you worry about your finances, you're on a fixed income, and do what David did. Even to old age and gray hairs, O God, do not forsake me until I proclaim your might to another generation, your power to all those who come. Well, let's go to prayer. In you, O Lord, we have taken refuge. Let us never be put to shame. Rescue us and deliver us in your righteousness. Please turn your ear to us and save us. be our rock of refuge to which we can always go. Please give the command to save us, for you are our rock and fortress. Your righteousness reaches to the skies, O God. You have done great things. Who is like you? We will praise you for your faithfulness and sing to you, O Holy One of Israel. Our tongues will tell of your righteous acts all day long. Amen.
Hi, this is Kirk Cameron, and I am honored to be partnering with the Ministry of Preborn and American Family Radio to help moms choose life.
Actor Kirk Cameron supports Preborn.
My 4 oldest children were adopted. That is because of caring and compassionate people who help those young mothers choose life. My wife is an adopted child, and her birth mother chose life for her. If it weren't for those caring individuals that help those young moms value the sacredness of life, I wouldn't have my wife, I wouldn't have my 4 adopted children, and the 2 natural-born children that we have wouldn't exist either. My whole family is here because of people that are involved with ministries like Preborn.
Underwrite a free ultrasound and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
He rose and struck down the Philistines until his hand was weary, and his hand clung to the sword. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Corner. Orange County, California Sheriff Sandra Hutchins said in a press release that Senate Bill 54, California's new sanctuary law, hinders collaborative efforts to remove criminals from the community, and she instructed her staff to respond promptly to requests from ICE. She explained further that SB 54 makes local law enforcement's job more difficult and requires bureaucratic processes that could allow dangerous individuals to fall through the cracks of our criminal justice system. Not everyone in California is drinking the crazy Kool-Aid.
Listen to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Central on AFR. For more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Brian Fisher here, program Focal Point, Network American Family Radio. You are listening to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Glad to have you in the conversation aboard the USS Focal Point again. It is a warship. It is not a pleasure cruise. It's not a carnival cruise. This is a warship. We are all to man our battle stations. In fact, today we have a action alert that I'd like to encourage you to participate on. It's one that's targeted at Target. And the reason it's targeted at Target, they had another guy, an adult. This is what we talked about from the beginning. The reason we're boycotting Target and encouraging people to join us in that is that they have a policy, as you're aware, that's been imitated by other companies, that they will allow men to go into the dressing rooms that your young daughters are using and into the bathrooms that your young daughters are using, or your teenage daughters, or your wives, or your sisters, or your grandchildren. And Target has said anybody can use any bathroom they want. We're not going to ask any questions. We're not going to stop anybody. We're not going to screen anybody. And so here again is another story. This is in the Chicago area. This is in a Target store in the Chicago area. A man forced himself into a bathroom stall that was occupied by a young child and exposed himself to her. The man ran away before the cops could arrive, so they don't have anybody in custody. But it happened in the middle of the afternoon on a Sunday. A lot of people go shopping on Sunday afternoon. That's when it happened. No Target employee questioned the man. No Target employee tried to stop him from entering a woman's restroom, because Target's policy explicitly says men are free and unrestricted, have free and unrestricted access to bathrooms where your little girl may be. So there have been at least a dozen crimes now that have been committed at Target because of this policy. And again, our concern, they did it for transgenders. Our concern from the beginning was never about transgenders. Our concern was for men who were sexual predators who would use the transgender policy as an excuse to go in and take advantage of vulnerable young women. So There's a pedophile going in and busting into a private stall. That's Target. So again, we are encouraging you to forward this information. It's an action alert from AFA. You go to afa.net. You can find the action alert there. If you get it in your email inbox, encourage you to forward it on to others. There's a phone number if you'd like to call Target headquarters and let them know you're boycotting their stores. In fact, I'll give you the number right now. You can call Target today if you want. Just let them know you're boycotting their stores because things like this keep happening in Target stores. Their number, Target headquarters, is 612-304-6073. 612-304-6073. So give them a call and let us know if you got hold of, when we go to the phone calls into this hour, let us know if you got hold of anybody live and what they said to you. Now, we've got another phone number that we want to give to you, and I'm going to let you cogitate on that first number. We'll give you the second number here in a second. It's the number to call in and record your listener story. If you benefited from Focal Point, if you've benefited from American Family Radio, we'd love to hear about it. If we've motivated you to become more involved in the culture war, we've impacted your life in some way, AFR, Focal Point is important to you and your family in some way. It's had an impact on your life. God's used AFR or Focal Point in your life. We would love to hear about it. So I'll give you the number here in a second. Get ready to write the number down, but encourage you to call and share your listener story with us. You can record it. If you don't like what you recorded the first time, give it another shot, and we may be able to use it during our spring share-a-thon, which is coming up, by the way, in just 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, we start our spring share-a-thon on April 17. Now, I want to play, this is a unique caller story. Now, she's a little bit difficult to understand. We've done the best we can do with the audio, but she is a woman who is from Iran. She's from Iran, and somehow she's found her way to Focal Point, and she loves listening to the program. Let's listen.
Thank you very much for have my phone, and I am one of your always listener, Focal Point, and I love your stations very much. I'm from Iran, and thank you very much for always supporting our people and not the regime. We hope regime change we go back to Shah time, the wonderful time. And I'm so glad that you're all doing fine, especially Mr. I'm listening to his
I just forgot my name. I'll let that go.
Sorry, my English is not good. And thank you for everything. God bless America. God bless President Trump. And we love you all. Thank you very much. I love Focal Point.
I love Focal Point. Now, there's stuff in there that I couldn't quite decipher. We listened to it several times trying to get the message. I think she said she appreciated the fact that we were supporting the people of Iran, but not the regime. Yeah, was that what she said? Yeah. You know, talking about that's led by mullahs. You want a theocracy, go to Iran, because the mullahs there, the Khomeinis and all that, they run that, and they run it strictly according to Sharia law. That is a theocracy. We do not want a theocracy. We don't live in a theocracy. We do want God to be in charge of all of life, but we want it to be by the voluntary choice of the people. That's why we continue to persuade, we continue to proclaim the truth, we continue to defend the truth, encouraging people to grasp it and begin to live by it so our country once again can be based on biblical principles, not by force, but by the will of the American people. So if you'd like to imitate this example and give us a call and record your listener story like this listener from Iran did, the number to call, write it down now, open up your cell phone, punch it in so you can dial it right away, is 877-876-8893. 877-876-8893. Give that number a call and record your listener story, how you have benefited from the ministry of Focal Point. Now, let's see if we can get to some sound bites here. I got a great story coming up at the bottom of the hour, by the way. You're going to love it. We're going to take pretty much an entire segment. It's about a Christian soldier in World War II who was a hero and never bragged about it. His son never knew about it. He never talked about this thing his whole life. And it wasn't until his son began poking into his father's life that he came across this story. We're going to play a little bit of sound from the video that was done of that story. You'll definitely want to hear that. It's a cool, cool story. But on the latest on the immigration front, we've been talking about this caravan that's been making its way from Honduras all the way through Mexico, and Mexico has been giving them a free pass. City after city has been helping them move to the north. I mean, they've been getting buses together, loading them up on buses, feeding them, and of course, they want to get them out of town. They don't want those the illegal aliens. I mean, they're illegal in Mexico because they didn't come in with any kind of legal permission. They don't want illegal aliens in their towns any more than we do, so they're putting them on buses and sending them to the next town.
I think they've unofficially named it Operation Olay.
Operation Olay.
Like a matador just waving people
waving them through. Yeah. Well, and Mexico is now saying that they're going to disband this caravan, that they're going to stop it, they're going to bust it up. Migrants line up to speak with Mexican immigration officials with Grupos Beta. Mexico's National Institute of Immigration said late Monday that it plans by Wednesday to disband a caravan of hundreds, I mean, it may be as many as 1,500 Central American migrants, read illegal immigrants, that has been traveling through Mexico for 9 days. They do, however, expect some of the migrants to continue north to the U.S. border. Now, by the way, Donald Trump has been saying today that he is prepared to use our military on our southern border. I think it is high time that we did that because we need to stop this flood that's coming across our border, and that's part of the military to protect our security, to protect the peace and tranquility of the American people. There is no reason why they cannot be deployed to the border. We're not sending them there to do internal law enforcement. That's the job for the police and our sheriffs and the FBI and all of that. But in terms of defending our borders, that is a perfectly permissible and constitutional job for our law enforcement officials. And remember, for our military. And remember that the Bible clearly indicates that borders are God's idea. Borders are not man's idea. Borders are God's idea. We see that in Acts chapter 17. We also see that when Moses is taking the people of Israel through the desert. Remember, he came up to the border of Moab or Edom. I can't remember which one, Moab or Edom. He came up to the border, and he said, look, what we'd like to do is we'd like to pass through your land, just like this caravan. We'd like to pass through your land. We're going to Canaan. We're not going to stop in your land. We're not going to park here. We're not going to live here. We have no interest in doing that. We will pay you for everything that we use. We just want permission to come into your land and to pass through it on our way into Canaan. And the king of Moab or the king of Edom, whichever one it was, said, no, we're not going to let you do it. And so Moses, you know what he did? He went clean around Moab or Edom. He didn't barge through. He didn't barge in. He didn't give them a lecture. He just accepted the fact that they've got a border. It's a sovereign border. It's a sacred border. We're going to honor that. We're going to take the entire nation of Israel, 2 million people. We're going to take them around the country of Moab and Edom. Now let's play clip number 4. This is Donald Trump this morning in the White House talking about this caravan.
I just noticed that the caravan now, which is toward the middle of Mexico, coming up from Honduras, is breaking up very rapidly. That's because Mexico has very strong immigration laws, as we should have. We should have those laws. We don't have. We have immigration laws that are laughed at by everybody.
Immigration laws that are laughed at by everybody, and Trump willing to use the border. And we've mentioned before that we have 32,000 of troops stationed on the border between South Korea and North Korea. I would be willing to bet that that is the most secure border in the entire world. Remember that one guy from North Korea made a break for it, got across the border into South Korea. One guy, and it was an international story for several days because that border is locked up. It is locked tight by our military. If we can keep the southern border or the northern border of South Korea secure, we can keep the southern border of America secure at the same time. Now let's grab clip number 6. This is Tucker Carlson talking to a guy named Enrique Moronas, who is the founder of Border Angels. Let's listen.
And you're saying that Hondurans have a right to come here because we take the natural resources of Honduras somehow? Can you be a lot more specific?
Absolutely. The invasion of the United States of sovereign lands, whether it was the interference in Central America with the Reagan administration.
What do we do to Hondurans?
Well, have you heard of Iran-Contra? Have you heard of the fact that the United States is the #1 consumer of natural resources from other countries? The #1 consumer
in
of illegal
Honduras?
drugs?
So these people are coming here to punish us for bad things we did in Honduras?
No.
Are you representative of people on the left? Is everybody this dumb?
The United States has a large
what are you talking about?
responsibility.
What are you talking about? You know, because their excuse is that we have raped and pillaged and we've taken advantage of them and we have reduced them to poverty. We haven't invaded any of these countries. We may have helped them develop their natural resources. They benefit from that. We may benefit from that if we find oil there, but it's just ridiculous. So they just simply have no argument why they ought to be allowed to come into our country. Be right back. Stay with us.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Last time I was with you, I talked about the cataclysmic damage that is being done to the American moral conscience by the avalanche of unborn babies being killed because at least one person considers them to be too embarrassing, too expensive, too ill, or too inconvenient. And I shared with you about where this can lead. We now have a situation where a French court has approved the French Broadcasting Council banning a video that depicts happy, functioning Down syndrome children, comforting mothers-to-be and telling them that their Down syndrome baby is going to be able to live a happy life and that you'll be happy too. The reason for banning this, because it might give a guilty conscience. It might make someone upset who has chosen to kill their baby because their baby possibly had Down syndrome. So a video that tells the truth is banned because it might offend the consciences of those who have made extremely bad and fatal decisions for the babies they killed. Now, when I read this story, it reminded me of Dr. Jocelyn Elders, who, because of the judgment of God, for a brief time was the Surgeon General of the United States in the Clinton administration. And she made the assertion before a congressional committee that abortion had improved the health of the nation. And when she was asked to defend that rather grotesque statement, she said, well, we are eliminating Down syndrome babies from America. That is appalling. And it is morally bankrupt, and it probably should have been said with a German accent and a Sieg Heil salute. What the French court and Jocelyn Elders, in effect, were both saying is that the lives of Down syndrome people, and by implication the lives of other disabled people, matter less than the serenity of those who have made the decision to kill their babies because they have disabilities. Now that's an inconvenient truth. For more information about Southern Evangelical Seminary, go to ses.edu. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. I think you're really going to enjoy this next segment. Brian Fisher is my name. Network is American Family Radio Network. This is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. And we got a little bit of muscular Christianity for you in this next little segment. Now, I need to set this up. This is a story that was put together by Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds' son. Roddy Edmonds was a Master Sergeant in World War II. He died when his son was about 26. And his son had talked to him about his military experience at some point, but he just told his son, look, there's some things I'd just rather not talk about, and his military experience was one of them, and he was a POW for some time, which is what this story really centers around. So Roddy Edmonds is in World War II. He's a Master Sergeant in World War II. He's taken captive in Ardennes in Belgium. This was during the German Battle of the Bulge. The Germans broke through the lines. They surrounded Roddy Edmonds and all of his troops, and they were taken to a prison camp, a prisoner of war camp. And there were Jews and Gentile soldiers all mixed in. And you'll hear the story because what I did is I put Rob to quite a bit of work today to go through this thing and take out everything other than the voices of the Jews who were present when this thing happened. And they talk about what happened. They talk about their experience in the POW camps. They talk about their observations about Roddy Edmonds. And remember, his son never found out about this incident until he researched it himself. He just got curious, began looking up his father's military record, military history, began poking into it, began contacting people whose names he came across in researching the experience of his father. His father didn't get any kind of award for this, didn't get any kind of recognition, didn't get any kind of notice. This is something that just would have disappeared into the fog of history if his son had not taken the time to record this. And this was produced by a Jewish foundation that seeks to honor those who worked on behalf of the Jewish people. So let's listen. You're going to hear the voice of these Jewish POWs that were POWs in 1944 and 45 when this happened. You'll hear from a guy named Lester Tanner, Sonny Fox, Paul Stern, and Sidney Friedman. You won't know which is which, but those are the guys that are speaking on this take. Let's listen.
I was being interviewed by the New York Times in 2008. All of a sudden, I remembered that there was a Master Sergeant, Roddy Edmonds, who saved my life when he defied the Germans and POW camp. That's all I said. Roddy grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. He probably never met a Jew in Tennessee when he went into the Army.
My dog tag had the information on it, my name and my serial number, and the letter H for Hebrew, so that if they found our bodies, they would know how to bury us.
One of the things we were told that if we were captured, we should destroy our dog tags.
Because being a Jew in that circumstance, we didn't know what our future was.
They loaded us on boxcars.
We were packed like sardines in that boxcar. No food or water on the 4-day trip to Bad Orb.
So the boxcars we were in turned out to be exactly the same cars that were taking the Jews to concentration camps. We had to register. Name, rank, serial number.
But then they started asking questions about your religion.
The Germans segregated the Jewish POWs.
And we were assigned to the Jewish barracks.
Special barracks surrounded by barbed wire within the prison. We were in a prison within the prison. There were about 1,200 American prisoners. Of the 1,200, I would estimate maybe 200 were Jewish. It was January 27, 1945, when the Germans announced that all Jewish American prisoners would fall out the following morning. Just them. Anyone who didn't fall out would be shot. Same thing that they had said at Bad Orb. Roddy, for the first time in his experience, was in complete command. There was no one there to give him orders. It was his decision. He said, we're not going to do that. Everyone is going to fall out just as we do every morning. That following morning, Roddy is standing at the head of formation, and I was standing by his side.
I was there, the German was there, and Lester was there. So I heard every word that the commandant said.
Major Siegmann comes up to Roddy, and he says, you can't all be Jews. And Roddy said, we are all Jews.
That famous line, we're all Jews here, that will live in Jewish history.
Takes out his Luger and puts it next to Roddy's forehead, and he says, you will order the Jews to step forward, or I will shoot you right now. And Roddy said to him, Major, you can shoot me, you can shoot all of us, but we know who you are. And this war is almost over, and you'll be a war criminal. And with that, the Major lowered his Luger, about-faced, went back to his headquarters. The German commanders informed Roddy that they were going to evacuate the camp.
They don't want to be around when the Americans come.
And under Roddy's leadership, we refused. And that's why I'm here to tell you about the story today.
Roddy said, we're just too weak to go on a long march.
We were in such lousy shape. The chances of coming out of that alive are not good. We can see the British are moving out. Everybody else is moving out. We're still standing there. Finally, they give up, the Germans.
The German officers came up to Roddy and said, okay, camp is yours. And they marched out. We were left alone in the camp.
We were liberated on March 30th by an American armored group.
The 6th Armored Division, as it turns out.
They were amazed to see these American soldiers, thin, hungry. It was such a happy day.
We were liberated on March 30th, which was the second day of Passover.
And every time I ran a Seder, I would make this point because it was the date of my freedom.
Well, they took us to Camp Lucky Strike, and I lost track of Roddy. And I never saw him again after that day. But it was never out of my mind. I have to tell you, that experience in Roddy was a defining experience in my life.
Roddy was incredible. He never really got his recognition, except among us.
We were very lucky to have him with us.
That such people can exist gives you hope, maybe, for humanity.
We stood there, we were the witnesses. We were the witnesses.
It wasn't only my life. Our lives multiplied. I have 4 children. I have 6 grandchildren. I have 2 great-grandchildren. So how would I have 18 people that wouldn't be here without him? Multiply that by 200, and you can see how important that decision has been.
That's the biggest joy for me, is to see the real people, the lives that have been touched and changed.
Roddy could no more have turned over any of his men to the Nazis than he could stop breathing. He just couldn't do it. A righteous man.
Sergeant Roddy Edmonds. I did not even know that guy's name until this weekend. Now he is one of my all-time heroes. Oh, boy. Wow. That chokes me up every time I hear it. Listen to those guys talk. You know, but that's masculine Christianity right there. That's muscular Christianity right there, putting his life on the line for the man he was responsible for, willing to take a bullet for him rather than give them up to the Nazi war machine. So
I didn't think I didn't think I'd get emotional again after working through that, but my goodness.
Yeah, this is maybe the 4th time through it for me, and it just gets to me just every time. So anyway, great story about Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds. I think for all of us, that guy, now that we've heard this story and heard the Jews bear witness to his righteousness, his character, his courage, his boldness, his leadership, a hero to everybody. So anyway,
and his humility.
And his humility. Didn't look for any credit for it. Didn't ask for any credit. Didn't publicize it. Nobody would know about it if his son hadn't followed in his father's footsteps. There's some good footage there in the video where he's actually literally walking in the steps that his father walked, standing on the place, right on the place, the very plot of ground where he stood up against the Nazi commander who wanted him to cause the Jews to step forward so they could all be shot.
Where did you find that? Maybe I should post that on your Facebook page.
Well, you know, that's a good thought.
I'll research it during the break.
We can probably get it. We'll get it up on the Facebook page. You may want to. It's about a 14-minute video from beginning to end, but I guarantee you it's worth your time.
Yes.
To watch that. It's an outstanding
So
video.
many stories out of World War II that weren't told. Like that.
Yeah.
Heroism and just selflessness.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. You know, I think heaven is going to be a lot more interesting than people think. I mean, I really do. You know, everybody, you ask them, what's heaven going to be about? Well, you think it's going to be floating around on a cloud and strumming on a harp. And I'll tell you, so that sounds boring. That bore me out of my skull if that's what heaven is like. No thanks. Right. But remember in the Narnia Chronicles, C.S. Lewis is drawing a picture, and Narnia is a parallel to the world in which we live, and the new Narnia is a parallel to the age to come. And one of the things that C.S. Lewis paints in that story is that when the new Narnia comes, all of the stuff that was good in the old Narnia gets carried forward and transported in to the new Narnia. It's the old stuff, the bad stuff, the malicious stuff, the evil stuff, the dark stuff. That's the stuff, the decay and all the rot. That's what gets left behind, but all the good stuff moves forward into the age to come. That's why I believe, you may laugh at me for thinking this, but that's why I believe that we're going to have the best golf courses that have ever been built in the entire universe will be available to us in the kingdom to come. We'll be able to eat New York strip steaks anytime we want, and we won't gain an ounce. We'll be able to play baseball if that's your thing. And we'll have seminars where we'll hear some of these stories from World War II about how our brothers and sisters showed bravery, courage in the face of great danger. We'll be back with your calls right after this. Stay with us. Number to call is 888-589-8840.
I would have no clue what's going on if I don't listen to AFR, and it prompts you to get in the fight.
We're collecting stories of how God is using American Family Radio.
I've gotten so much out of AFR and strengthened my faith. I've truly turned my life around.
Take a moment to share how God is using American Family Radio in your life. Call our listener story voicemail at 877-876-8893. That's 877-876-8893.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome to the last segment of this brand new edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Again, we're taking calls in this segment. The number to call to join our conversation is 888-589-8840. Love to know what you think about this whole caravan business, what you think about the justification that illegals use, why they ought to be admitted into the United States, what you think of the story we just rehearsed for you about this little-known hero from World War II.
And by the way, it is on your Facebook page now, and also on the Facebook Live feed of either place.
Okay, so you can get it on the Facebook page or the Facebook Live feed.
Yeah, I've got to mention YouTube.
Go over on YouTube. So you can get that if you'd like to watch it for yourself. And don't forget, we are live streaming on Facebook. We are live streaming on YouTube. You can go to the YouTube channel and you can subscribe to it. You'll get a notification every time a brand new broadcast of Focal Point begins. Live stream it on Facebook. We record it during the program. We upload it to the Facebook page after the program is over. Publish it with an extensive table of contents so you can find your way around. Makes it very easy to share with your friends. In fact, I encourage you to share it to your own timeline so that your friends have an opportunity to join the Focal Point listening audience as well. You also can be listened to us on one of our 184 stations that comprise the American Family Radio Network. You can use our apps for the iPhone and the Android to listen to us on the go. You can catch a podcast, listen to it at your leisure after the program is over. You can also audio stream us by going to afr.net. Go to afr.net and automatically the audio stream will begin to play and you can listen to us through your computer. Let's play one more soundbite. This is Jorge Ramos, clip number 2. He's a guy that's from Mexico, one of the biggest advocates for illegal immigration, and one of the fiercest opponents then of Donald Trump and his efforts to control immigration. And here's what he has to say about these caravans that are coming to the U.S.
He has no idea what he's talking about. He precisely said that these caravans. First of all, there are no caravans. There's one group of about 1,500 Central Americans going from Chiapas, which is in the southern part of Mexico, going all the way to Tijuana. This is not the first time they've done it. Every year they do it. And their purpose, and we talked to the Univision, spoke to the spokesperson, they clearly say that their purpose is not to illegally come to the United States. They simply want to bring attention to the violence in Central America. Many of them are from Honduras. So there's no invasion. No one wants to invade the United States, and they cannot take advantage of DACA. To apply for DACA, to qualify for DACA, you will have to have been here in this country before 2007, 11 years ago. This is completely impossible. I don't know what the president is talking about.
Well, we don't know what you're talking about, Jorge, because the whole purpose of this caravan, and I mean 1,500 people, sounds like a caravan to me, might even be more, and they have made it very, very clear. You know, here Jorge Ramos says that their purpose is not to come illegally to the United States. No, it is. They talked openly about this. They're going to come to the southern border. They are going to cross the southern border, and they're going to ask for asylum. As soon as they get across the border, they are going to ask for asylum. So they are going to come in to this country illegally. Jorge Ramos says their focus is to bring attention to the violence. That's not what it is. They want to get into America. They want to come to America. You know, there was a little thread going around the office this morning among a number of us about a book that was written a number of years ago called The Camp of the Saints. And the thesis of this book, it's no longer far-fetched, is that the way in which the enemy of the United States would destroy us would be from within through illegal immigration, through a flood of illegal immigrants coming from the South and flooding our country, diluting, diminishing our character, and leading to our collapse as a people. All right, well, let's go to the phones. Let's begin with Charlie in Bladenboro, North Carolina. Charlie, welcome. Looks like you called Targus. Tell us what happened.
Yes, I did. Good afternoon, Mr. Fisher.
Howdy.
I called as soon as you suggested, and I did get a hold of a live person, a young man. He seemed very nice on his end, but he answered. And, of course, I gave my complaint about what Target's doing. And I asked him, I said, is this a real person or am I talking to a recording? Because he had no emotion. I told him what you had just said, that this person had been accosted in the women's restroom. But his first thing out of his mouth, he said, well, we try to be inclusive here at Target. We try to respect anybody's sexual orientation. He said, we are working to fix this. Now, I said, the bottom line, I said, sir, this will not be fixed until you stop the policy. I said, there shouldn't be scratching any heads. What do we do? How do we fix it? Just stop what you're doing. And he said, well, I'll pass it along. And that's, I guess I got just a non-answer. Or maybe he's just having to, in defense of him, he's having to spew out what they tell him to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I did call.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got a script out there, and they got little buzzwords they use. We're all about inclusivism, inclusiveness, inclusivity. We're all about affirming and embracing all sexual orientations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what he's telling us is that our policy of inclusion has a place for pedophiles. We're not going to discriminate against pedophiles. The pedophile wants to come into one of our ladies' dressing rooms, wants to come into one of our ladies' bathrooms. We are not going to stop him. That would be discrimination. We're not about that. We're about including everybody, even pedophiles. This is where Target is going with their policy. So thanks for calling, Charlie. I appreciate that. You know, interesting to get that kind of response. Let's go to Stan in South Haven, Mississippi. Stan, I guess you called Target as well. Talk to me.
Yes, that is correct. As soon as you gave the number, my wife called, and she got a switchboard and was put on hold. And actually, for several minutes, we were about ready to give up when the lady answered, and my wife pretty much told her what she thought of the policy, and she gave the same rigmarole about inclusiveness that the previous caller gave, but it wasn't until she said, we value the safety of all of our guests, and that's when my wife said, you're a liar. It is a lie, because if you did, you would protect innocent children from these pedophiles who are coming in and taking advantage of this.
Well, that's a great call. It's a great response, a good, firm, solid response, firm, bold, and direct. That's what we need to do as Christian citizens. We don't have to lose our temper. We don't have to go off and use profanity. We can be direct and firm, just like we heard, just as Stan's wife was with the woman at the Target. And so, what Target is admitting, this is the horrible part about this. They're not troubled by this. That the first guy that we talked to, Charlie, he said, look, there was no emotion in this guy's voice. We're talking about a 4-year-old girl. We don't know what her reaction to it was, but it can't be good, and it could be very bad. It could be very troubling to her. I mean, I would expect it would be. And Target doesn't care. They do not care that a 4-year-old girl has been victimized in one of their bathrooms. They don't care. And their policy of inclusiveness now has room for pedophiles. That's all you need to know about Target. Their policy of inclusiveness now has room in it for pedophiles. They're not going to stop them. They're not going to question them. They can go into any ladies' room, any ladies' dressing room that they want, and they're not going to stop them. They're going to have to do something to an innocent victim before Target is going to pay any kind of attention. So they're willing to let people be victimized, become sexual victims in their dressing rooms, in their bathrooms, and they're not going to do a single cotton-picking, solitary thing to prevent it.
What would have happened if her dad had been standing at that door and she screamed and that guy was in there? This would have destroyed an entire family and another person.
Yeah, that would not have been a pretty thing.
It wouldn't be pretty. And they're teeter-tottering on that possibility.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things they may be counting on is that the only people we're going to find besides us in these these private parts of the store are going to be other women. So we might find a mom in there, but we're bigger than the mom. And besides, I'm going into the stall where nobody can see me. So anyway, I'm just appalled. This is more appalling even than I thought. All right, so Target now, their policy of inclusiveness now, ladies and gentlemen, has room for pedophiles. And by their own words coming out of their mouth, that's the case. Phil in Albany, Georgia. What's on your mind, Phil? Talk to me.
Hey, the caravan.
Yes, sir.
1,500 people. Most of the photographs mostly show men. You take a look at what they're showing. 2/3 are young men.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit questionable to me. Number two, who is bankrolling that thing? They're stopping and being fed at stops and places that are already set out for them, part of their projected route, going up toward not Texas, going toward California. But who's paying for this?
Well, that's a good question. I hadn't even asked myself that question. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to the bottom of this. There was some George Soros money floating around, because George Soros is wealthy beyond our wildest dreams, and he's committed to using his wealth to disrupt the West. He would like to bring down the West. He would like to bring down, he's trying to destroy Hungary. Remember, Hungary is one of the few countries in Europe where they're unapologetically proud of their Christian history. Viktor Orban there says, we've got a fence around this country because we want to protect it from those who would come into this country who do not share our reverence and our respect for the Christian tradition. We are a Christian nation by heritage, tradition, religion, and values. We're not going to let anybody into this country that's not going to honor that. That's not going to support that. That's not going to be a part of that. And we're going to put a fence up around this country to make sure it doesn't happen. And that's what they've been doing, and it has been working. So Viktor Orban, and that's where George Soros is from. He's Hungarian by birth. He's trying to undermine the government in his own country, and he's trying to undermine governments in the West. So that's a very good question. If we get, we'll have to see if we can get an answer to that, Phil, because that's a very good question, thought-provoking. Let's go to Joe in Oklahoma. Joe, welcome. What's on your mind? Got about 30 seconds. Hit me.
Oh, man, I don't know if I can do it in 30 seconds, but I'll try. I just want to share something with you and your listeners. Some years ago, I was trying to help a friend of mine stay in the United States. He was a Ph.D. civil engineer. And I called INS at the time, and I was asking about it, and there was an immigration officer told me, we cannot let everybody come to this country who wants to live here, because there are 30 million Chinese that have already applied. That's not the ones who want to live here. That's the ones who have already gone through the application process.
Wow.
So if we let everybody come through here, man, I mean, we'll cease to exist as a nation. We can't hold that number.
Great call, Joe. I appreciate that. Yeah, we would be a different country, and that's why Hungary says we're not going to let anybody in here. We have a heritage we want to protect, and we need to do the same thing. Great call.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
1milliondads.com
Be strengthened as a Christian leader for your wife and children, your church, your community. We believe that missing fathers is what's wrong with this country. 1milliondads.com is where we can learn and grow together as men of the cross. 1milliondads.com. Lead, or others will.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. A Dutch national gets 30 days in prison and a $20,000 fine for lying to the FBI regarding the Russia investigation. Rachel Sutherland has more.
Alex van der Zwaan pleaded guilty to lying about his contacts with Rick Gates, who was a former deputy director of the Trump campaign, and about conversations with an unnamed person the special counsel claims had ties to Russian intelligence. Gates and former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort were charged in an alleged money laundering and tax evasion scheme uncovered by the special counsel. Gates has pleaded guilty to charges of conspiracy and lying to the FBI. Manafort has pleaded not guilty. Van der Zwaan is the son-in-law of a Russian oligarch. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
New Indiana laws make the abortion industry in the state more transparent. Details from Charlie Butts.
Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb has signed 2 new bills. Ryan McCann of the Indiana Family Institute says the first helps to keep the abortion industry safer.
Before this law, if an abortion clinic wanted to open up in the state of Indiana, they didn't have to reveal past problems or violations or even criminal activity by their staff members in other states. And so now, before an abortion clinic can open up in Indiana, they need to reveal violations and problems they've been a part of in other states.
That's information Indiana believes women have a right to if they are considering abortion. A second law requires abortionists and hospitals to report any complications to abortion. Abortion proponents claim it's safer than natural childbirth.
It's just kind of an incredible claim they've made for years and years and years. And part of the reason is so many times a woman comes to an abortion clinic, has an abortion, and then there's a problem, and they go to the emergency room after the abortion clinic. And so we feel like a lot of times the reporting of complications and things are not accurately put together.
So the new reporting will allow the state to assess the information and get a clearer idea of complications stemming from abortions, both surgical and chemical. Now, if a pregnant woman is murdered, prosecutors can charge the culprit with double homicide. I'm Charlie Butts.
Washington State has passed a law that ensures that journalists in K-12 schools and those in colleges and universities have greater freedoms. More from Bob Kellogg.
The legislation, signed by Governor Jay Inslee, was modeled on the Student Press Law Center's New Voices campaign. We asked Joe Cohn of the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education why more states have not enacted such legislation.
Well, it's a relatively new campaign to ask states to adopt these laws, and I think they're off to a really great start.
Cohn says the model legislation enjoys bipartisan support. However, some states, such as Arizona, were not ready to enact the New Voices campaign model into law.
The governor vetoed the bill last year, noting that he supported the parts that dealt with higher ed, but was uncomfortable changing the rules in the K-12 setting, saying that he thought that it was appropriate for school principals to exercise more control.
According to FIRE, the U.S. Supreme Court in 1988 granted administrators, at least in the K-12 setting, the authority to censor school-sponsored media. The New Voices legislation nullifies the effects of that decision. I'm Bob Kellogg.
Thousands of teachers in Oklahoma marched and filled that state's capital today for day 2 of a statewide teacher walkout demanding more school funding and better pay. A spike in homicides sees London's murder rate overtake New York's.
In the latest violence, a 17-year-old girl was shot dead overnight. For years, New York's homicide rate has outstripped London's, but in both February and March, London police opened more murder inquiries than the NYPD. Those figures reflecting longer-term trends in recent years. In London, the rise has been driven by a surge in knife crime. London's police chief saying stop and frisk street searches will be stepped up. The London Mayor's office says the city remains one of the safest in the world. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Announcing 3 new episodes of Ryan DeFrady's Secret Agent. These animated half-hour episodes will entertain children.
That's right!
And teach lessons about joy, patience, and the dangers of selfishness. Ryan DeFrady's is a secret agent with a whole lot to learn, and he insists on working alone until he's paired with a very unlikely partner.
Mommy!
Ryan DeFrady's Secret Agent, episodes 4, 5, and 6 from American Family Studios are available now at afastore.net.
They loaded us on boxcars.
We were packed like sardines in that boxcar. No food or water on the 4-day trip to Bad Orem.
There's no invasion. No one wants to invade the United States.
Today in the White House, we have perhaps the worst and most dangerous president in the history of our country.
He has no idea what he's talking about.
This president is the worst that I've ever seen.
Where were you in 2017 when we had the worst president in the history of the United States?
He has no idea what he's talking about.
I would even argue that he is the worst after 1 year because of what other presidents oversaw.
Donald Trump is the worst strategist in the history of the American presidency.
I don't know what the president is talking about.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Want to be sure you know you can live stream us on Facebook, and we record it as we're live streaming it on Facebook, upload it to the Facebook page after it's recorded, publish it with an extensive table of contents so you can find your way around. You can share it with people on your timeline, which I encourage you to do every day so they can at least find out about Focal Point. Also, you can listen on one of our 184 radio stations if you've got one of those in your community. You can audio stream us by going to afr.net. The audio stream will automatically play. You can listen through your computer. We not only live stream on Facebook, we live stream on YouTube. You can go to our YouTube channel. You can subscribe. You get a little notification every time we start a new broadcast. So if you want to watch the program, you're at work and can't watch the program during the day, you can get home and watch it either on YouTube or watch it on the live stream channel on Facebook. Glad to encourage you to do that and invite you to do that. Now, beginning of this hour, I want to, would you check, Jeff, and see if my column is up?
I will.
I believe it probably is by now. Got a column up at afa.net, or it will be shortly if it's not, and it's our winnable war moment for today. I got a big, huge, monster winnable war moment for you, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, there's a lot of lessons out of this. One of them is that elections have consequences. You know, Donald Trump campaigned as somebody who would defend religious liberty. Hillary Clinton was exactly the opposite. Hillary Clinton basically saw no religious right that had to be protected, had to be honored, had to be preserved, had to be respected. And Donald Trump said, I'm going to be a defender of religious liberty. And to Donald Trump's credit, that is one of the promises that he has kept. Now, I know we all have different opinions about Donald Trump, and that's fine. We can disagree about him and all that. That's fine. Nobody has to agree with anybody else about Donald Trump. But I think it's without question true that when it comes to religious liberty, he is keeping his promise, the promise that he's made to the American people. Now, here's an example. This has to do with the United States Air Force, which used to be the friendliest branch of the military to Christian faith, specifically the Christian faith. They had a Christian coach, Fisher DeBerry, for a lot of years. Explicitly Christian. They had prayers in the locker room and all that kind of thing, and then they got judges involved and all that, and it cobbed that whole thing up. They got a beautiful chapel, spectacular chapel on the grounds of the Air Force Academy. Maybe you've seen it. It's just a beautiful building, and so it used to be an extremely friendly place toward Christian faith. It's now become overtly hostile. And part of it was they had a lesbian who was the Secretary of the Air Force for a while. And she was death on wheels, as most homosexuals are, toward any expressions of religious liberty, any expressions of the Christian faith. Now, we've talked about this story before. You may remember it. It's been a couple of years. But Air Force Colonel Leland Bohannon is the guy that we're talking about today. Now, this guy, Colonel Leland Bohannon, this is the kind of guy that we want in our military. He flew combat missions in the Middle East. He was awarded the Bronze Star, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, and the Air Medal. So a highly decorated pilot, flew combat missions in the Middle East. And he was on his way to becoming a one-star general. That was the promotion that was waiting for him. They were moving forward with that. Next thing he knew, he was going to be a one-star general. But in 2017, a little over a year ago, the Air Force committed a blatant display of Christophobic bigotry. Christophobic because they hate Christ, they resist Christ, they fear Christ, they don't want to have anything to do with Christ, they don't want Christ around, they don't want his name around, they don't want his name on any posters, any literature, and it's bigotry. I mean, it's just plain old bigotry against Christianity, against the person of Christ, and against those of us who call ourselves by his name. So they suspended him in 2017, suspended him from command when he was on the verge of getting this promotion to becoming a one-star general. And orders came from on high that he was never to be promoted again. He's done getting any advances in the United States military. They were trying to get rid of him, is what they were trying to do. So the question is, what was his crime? This must have been serious if he suspended him from command duty and it put his entire military career in jeopardy. What was his crime? His crime, ladies and gentlemen, was that he believes, just as you and I do, he believes in natural marriage. He believes in marriage as God has defined it, the union of one man and one woman. Because of that, his conscience would not allow him to approve a union of two men or two women in a counterfeit, quote, marriage, end quote. So there was a retiring master sergeant came to him, he was under his command, and he asked him to sign a certificate of spouse appreciation for his same-sex spouse. He was in a sodomy-based marriage, and he wanted his commanding officer, this colonel, to sign off on that, to sign a notice of appreciation for that union. Now, Colonel Bohannon politely declines, says, I can't do it. My conscience will not permit me to do it. I can't affirm that kind of a union. But he went to the trouble to find a two-star general who could sign the certificate. And this two-star general did it. He was happy to sign the certificate. So this sergeant, this master or retiring master sergeant, got what he wanted. He got the certificate of appreciation signed by somebody who was a higher ranking officer. Now, you would think a mature human being would express gratitude to the colonel for going the extra mile, be happy for the colonel that a solution had been found that did not require him to violate his conscience, and go happily into retirement. But that is not how the homosexual activist movement works. For big gay, there is no room for accommodation. For them, it is homosexuality uber alles. Every advance of the homosexual agenda comes at the expense of religious liberty, as Colonel Bohannon's experience illustrates. Big Gay was not content to live and let live. By and large, Christians are. But Big Gay is not. They wanted Bohannon to be punished. They wanted him to be silenced. They wanted him to be driven out of the military for having a different belief about marriage than they have, for having a belief in marriage as God has designed it and defined it. And they nearly got their wish. They nailed him on what was called, quote, an unlawful discrimination charge. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there was certainly unlawful discrimination here, but Colonel Bohannon was the victim of the discrimination and not the perpetrator. The discrimination against Bohannon was not only unlawful, it was unconstitutional, because the First Amendment makes it clear as glass that the federal government, remember, Congress shall make the law, that the federal government is forbidden to interfere in any way with the, quote, free exercise of religion. Well, that's exactly what the federal government in the form of the United States Air Force did to Colonel Bohannon. Whatever else was going on here, his constitutional right to exercise his religious faith was not only not protected, it was obliterated. But thanks to our good friends at First Liberty Institute and attorney Hiram Sasser, who represented Colonel Bohannon, the Air Force was compelled to reverse its decision. Air Force Secretary Heather Wilson announced yesterday that the director of the Air Force Review Board's agency had ruled in Bohannon's favor, ruled that he, quote, had the right to exercise his sincerely held religious beliefs and did not unlawfully discriminate when he declined to sign the Certificate of Appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our Winnable War moment for today. Be right back.
The things that has happened within my family is nothing short of miraculous, and American Family Radio was certainly a tool in God's hand at bringing my husband to a saving grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. I spend probably the majority of my day listening to your programming. I feel like we should be on a best friend basis. Again, thank you so much for all you do, and thank you for your part in blessing the lives of so many families in ways that you'll probably only find in heaven someday, but you've certainly stored up your treasures well. Thank you.
Hi, this is Abraham Hamilton III, and it excites me beyond measure to hear how God is using American Family Radio. That's why I'm glad to have an opportunity to ask you to partner with us financially during our 3-day share-a-thon, starting Tuesday, April 17th.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Well, our June Spiritual Heritage Tour is full, and our September trip is filling up fast. So if you want to go with us to Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon for our Spiritual Heritage Tour, you need to sign up soon. We're going to be seeing lots and lots of sites, including the Capitol, the Library of Congress, the Supreme Court, the Jefferson and Lincoln Memorials, the Korean and Vietnam Memorials, the Arlington National Cemetery, and much, much more. For all the information on this tour, September the 19th through the 22nd, please go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com for all the information. And we also go to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. That's a separate trip, but we put them back to back in case you want to do both of those tours. Again, that's in September. For more information, go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome to Focal Point American Family Radio. My column is up at afa.net. First two words in the column, the title of the column is Winnable War. Air Force reverses bigoted decision against a Christian. So that is a genuine winnable war, because this becomes sort of a precedent that can be used in other cases of a similar strike. So anyway, there are going to be more battles to fight. I'll mention a couple of them here, as our government is just riddled with Obama holdovers who have a visceral hatred of Christianity, and they want every trace of it removed from public life. So we got more battles to fight, but this is a huge win, and it's an indication that a brighter day is dawning in our nation's capital when it comes to religious liberty, because of the president that we now have in office keeping his promises. That is good news. Now, a couple of the other issues that we got to fight. The Supreme Court blocked the release of more videos exposing Planned Parenthood's baby body part sales. Troy Newman, who's president of the pro-life group Operation Rescue, they had videos, undercover journalism. This is a classic part of American journalism, always has been. And he had incriminating videos of the involvement of Planned Parenthood in the sale of baby body parts, which is illegal. You can't do it. And they went to court to stop him from releasing this to law enforcement agencies. Realize that this is evidence. Yep. This is evidence. These tapes are evidence of criminal behavior. And they obviously, the Planned Parenthood does not want, and the National Abortion Federation, NAF, they do not want these videos released because it could get them in big legal trouble. So they've gone to court to sue to get them squashed, and the Supreme Court did not compel them to, did not make a decision that these videos can be released. They've blocked the release of these videos. So maybe we'll get an opportunity to talk to Troy Newman, whom I'm acquainted with. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to get him on the program and talk about this egregious decision. So more to come on that. And again, speaking of another issue we're going to need to fight, there are 19 attorneys general. Guess which party they belong to? 19 attorneys general who want to force Christian doctors to do abortions. They want to compel Christian doctors against their will, against their conscience, and against every moral principle of the medical profession to do abortions. They want them to be compelled to do it against their will and against their conscience.
I'm going to guess Democrat.
That would be a good guess.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you any credit for that because the answer is too easy. Yes, these are all Democrat attorneys general. So they're attorneys general in Democratic states, and they're going to court, joining together all 19 of them. The other 31 are either Republican attorneys general or they have an attorney general that doesn't want to get involved in this, but the bulk of them are Republican. So we'll see how that goes. I cannot imagine they're going to win this thing, but you just never know with our court system. As messed up as it is, it could happen. And then here's another judge that ordered the Trump administration to facilitate abortions for illegal immigrants. This judge basically saying that these illegal immigrants have a right to kill their babies, and they have the right to do it at our expense. So these illegal aliens have no right even to be in this country, and the Trump administration is trying to protect the innocent unborn lives that these mothers carry. And the judges are saying, no, you can't do that. You cannot protect these innocent unborn lives. If she wants an abortion, she has a right to kill her baby if that's what she wants to do. So that's another one that is going to be fought in court. You know, the Health and Human Services Administration, and again, this is a reflection of the new administration that we have, a new sheriff in town. It says it strongly maintains that taxpayers are not responsible for facilitating the abortion of unaccompanied minors who entered the country illegally and are currently in the government's care. And some of these people are in pretty bad shape because they smuggled these women to an abortionist while their case was still in court. That's a serious breach of judicial etiquette.
How did we get to this point that an illegal resident in this country has a citizen's right? It bothers me. I don't understand. How do you get to the absurdity of giving somebody that's illegal, they're a criminal, a right, and they don't belong to this country. They're not a citizen.
Don't have a right to be in this country.
But like Tucker said yesterday, what about the Russians? I mean,
they can come in and they can vote and whatever, according to these guests on his programs. Constitutional rights are reserved for people who have legal protection under the Constitution, and that is American citizens and people who have the legal right to reside in this country. They would have constitutional protections. Nobody else does. If you're in this country illegally, you cannot claim constitutional rights. That's why if you get apprehended at the border coming across illegally, you don't get to have your day in court. You get sent home forthwith. Because you don't have the constitutional right to get your day in court when you're not even in the country legally. Now, you're aware that Donald Trump's approval numbers are up. They're up to 50%. He was bragging about this yesterday. And by the way, his approval numbers at 50% are higher than the approval numbers of Barack Obama at the same stage of his presidency. He was just at 46% when he was at the same stage in his presidency. Donald Trump has a rating that's 4% higher. And here are some of the groups where he's gaining ground. And all of this ought to be encouraging, because realize, going back to what we saw about these Democrat attorneys general, ladies and gentlemen, it is pointless. It is pointless to expect the Democratic Party or any Democrat that belongs to it to support life in the womb. There's one guy, Dan Lipinski in Illinois. He's the only pro-life Democrat that I know of. He votes pro-life. He is a supporter of life in the womb. And the Democrats actively work to defeat him. The Democratic establishment poured a lot of money into the coffers of his Democratic opponent in the primary. He barely survived. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking to protect human life, the only political party that's going to be a part of that is going to be the Republican Party. That's just a fact. That's just the way of it. Now, Donald Trump is gaining ground with these groups. He's gaining ground with men. He's at 50% approval with men in March as compared to 42% in February. So he's going up 8% among men. Young voters, this is 18 to 34. In February, just 20% of them, 1 in 5, approved of how Trump was handling his job. That number is now up to 30%, almost a 10% jump in 1 month. Middle-aged voters between 35 and 49, he gained 9 points approval in a month among them. And college graduates have been the most resistant to Trump, but they made a 10-point swing in the direction of Donald Trump in March. You know, and you've got a situation where you've got the video, and we're gonna give you some sound here to illustrate that. You know, it's amazing. It is phenomenal that Donald Trump has 50% approval rating, because 90% plus, 90 to 93% of the media coverage of him has been negative. It has been visceral and vitriolically negative. Every time the media, except for Fox News, every time they do a story on Trump, it is to bash him, to beat him about the head and shoulders with something. In fact, I want to give you a sample. This is a montage that Rob produced for us this morning, came across and loaded it up, of media types or political figures talking about their hatred for Donald Trump. I mean, it's unalloyed, it's unabashed, it's unapologetic hatred for Donald Trump. So you're going to hear from Bernie Sanders, you're going to hear from Mad Maxine Waters, you're going to hear from Tom Perez, you're going to hear from Chris Hayes, and you're going to hear from Lawrence O'Donnell. Let's listen.
Today in the White House, we have perhaps the worst and most dangerous president in the history of our country.
This president is the worst that I've ever seen.
Where were you in 2017 when we had the worst president in the history of the United States?
I would even argue that he is the worst after 1 year because of what other presidents oversaw.
Donald Trump is the worst strategist in the history of the American presidency.
Right, there you have it. You know, and these are the people that you know, they want to be influential, but people are just tuning them out. People are saying, well, that's not how I view Donald Trump. Yeah, he's a little bit unpredictable, but that's part of his charm, isn't it? You never know what he's going to do next. And he keeps his enemies, his political enemies, he keeps them completely off balance, because they never know what he's going to do until he does it. And by the way, I printed out the story. I don't know if I can find it, but I think Donald Trump is getting the message there about this budget that he signed. A lot of his constituents, a lot of his base is unhappy with him for signing that budget, and the lawmakers are home. You know, they're home on break, Easter recess and all that, and they're getting an earful from their constituents about the budget. So they're actually looking for a loophole in the law that allows them to go back and reconsider allocations in the budget. Now, they got to get Congress to sign off on it, but they're actually looking at it. I mean, they're so unsettled by the buzzsaw. I mean, they get home and they ran into the propeller. There are folks telling them, look, we do not like that budget. It funds Planned Parenthood. It does not fund the border wall. What in the world are you guys doing? This is not what you promised us. This is not what President Trump promised us. He promised us a wall. He promised us to defund Planned Parenthood. This gives $500,000 to Planned Parenthood, and there's not a dime in there to build a wall. In fact, the only thing in the budget is a specific prohibition against using any money in the budget to build any wall that has concrete in it. So maybe you can put up some barbed wire and stuff. So anyway, I can't find the story right now that talks about that, but there is a story talks about the part of the law that they're looking at. I'll have that for you tomorrow. But I think they got an earful, and so they're getting ready to reconsider what they have done. And I think Donald Trump, I think maybe he has been kind of awakened by the unrest among the natives. The natives are restless out there, and Donald Trump knows it. He knows the promises that he made. He knows he's not carrying through on the Planned Parenthood promise. He's not carrying through on the border wall promise. I had apparently a profanity-laced shout-out with Ann Coulter. I read about that this morning. Some time ago in the Oval Office. They were in there about 20 minutes, and he got increasingly agitated because Ann Coulter's been hard on him for not keeping his promises, and he started swearing at her. And, Ann Coulter, she started swearing right back at him, and so they had a profanity-laced tirade going on there. But listen to what these adversaries of Donald Trump are saying. Bernie Sanders, the worst and most dangerous president. Mad Maxine Waters, the worst president we've ever seen. Tom Perez, head of the Democratic National Committee, the worst president in history. Chris Hayes, he's the worst president in history after 1 year. Lawrence O'Donnell, the worst strategist in the history of the American presidency, and yet his poll numbers continue to climb. We'll be right back.
Hey, my name's Brian. You ever make a change and then wonder, why didn't I do this a long time ago? That's what's happening for thousands of people with regard to their health care. They're joining Medishare, and then they're wondering, why didn't I already do this? For most members, it costs less than half what they were paying for their old health plan. There's a huge provider network, too. You can customize your plan, and this is awesome. Medishare members can go online with a doctor 24/7. So if you need a prescription for the flu or something, it's so convenient for you and your family. So yeah, this is one of those why did I wait on this things. And if you don't love your current health plan, you're not stuck with it. You can join Medishare anytime. By the way, to give you an idea, the typical savings for a family, about $500 a month. It just makes so much sense. Check it out. They're super easy to talk to. Call 855-SALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-SALM-23.
At this time for spiritual renewal, join Sandy Rios for a walk back to a young, grieving mom who discovers how God's strength is made perfect in weakness.
I'll be the song for you. I'll be the symphony.
The music of Sasha's song, Sandy Rios' first album project, can help mend a wounded spirit.
Would God sustain us through the years?
Produced by John Innes of the Billy Graham Crusade with members of the Indianapolis Orchestra, this beautiful music will lift your heart.
Like peering through a window blurred with rain. Emotions run together in the flood of doubt and pain. For he is able.
Sasha's song, now available on CD from afastore.net.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point Network American Family Radio. Maybe you've heard about this story. As a mother that was arrested by the police for tasing her son to wake him up for Easter service. She couldn't get him to wake up, get out of bed, get dressed, and go to Easter service, so she grabbed a taser and went in there and used it. Now, she insists that she just used the noise that the taser gun makes. She didn't actually zap him, but the police say they found a couple of bumps on the boy's leg and arrested Dobbins. She spent 12 hours in jail for tasing her son. And you wonder, I mean, I'm not defending the tasing, don't misunderstand me, but, what is a parent to do? What's a parent to do? I mean, it's like police are taking away every tool that a parent can use to discipline a child. Now, there are bumps on his leg, so I suppose that probably qualifies as an injury, and that would meet the threshold for legal thing. But if you spank a child, his bottom's going to be red after they do that. It's not going to break the skin and not going to be an injury. But there are a lot of places that lock you up for spanking your child. So anyway, I don't know what parents are supposed to do anymore. Children learning that they can put their parents in jail if their parents try to exercise discipline for them. And she said, I'm as a mom, my job is to get my son to put God first. He's not doing it. He's resisting my parental direction. What? I don't know. What do you do? What does she do? She go in there with a paddle, I guess? What would happen if she used a paddle on him? So anyway, we'll see. All right, let's go to clip number 5 while we're talking about the media. This is Dan Rather This is a hilarious soundbite for me because he's responding to something that the Sinclair Broadcasting Network did. They've got like 173 television stations across the country, and they are staunchly conservative. And they insist that occasionally their news anchors on their stations read statements from the network, from the headquarters. So all of their networks were instructed to read this statement of policy from Sinclair Broadcasting. Now, they didn't tell the anchors to pretend that it was their words or anything like that, and this happens all the time. I mean, you'll have NBC reporters, they'll read some official statement from NBC about this, that, or the other thing, and so these Sinclair networks did it. And the media had fun with it. They would do a collage of all these media anchors saying the same thing at the same time, try to make them sound robotic and all that kind of stuff. So Dan Rather weighs in on this, and here's what he thinks about Sinclair.
I'm Dan Rather, and I'm concerned about the troubling trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country. The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common in corporate media. More alarming, some corporate media publish these same fake stories that just don't matter, without checking with their journalists first. Unfortunately, some media executives use their local platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to trying to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Extremely dangerous to our democracy. And I agree with everything that Dan Rather said. But you know who the biggest offender is of this principle? It's Dan Rather. Remember, what finished his broadcast career is he got hold of a story that claimed that George Bush had gotten a pass on his National Guard requirements to escape active duty. He had some major favors done for him, so he didn't have to go on active duty. He could stay in the Air Guard. And he went public with that during an election season. He was trying to keep Bush from being elected president, and he was citing reports that he had, written reports. He was looking at them. But those written reports were supposed to be from 1970 and 1971, back when Bush was about that age, military sign-up age and all that kind of stuff. And they've, if it's 1970 or 71, they're going to have to be produced with a typewriter. But these written documents weren't. They were produced, obviously, with a computer. You use a typewriter, you can't, you're going to have mishits, so you're going to have white out. You're going to have, the letters aren't always going to line up. You're going to misstrike a letter, and it's going to be a little bit elevated. You cannot help it with a typewriter. So it had it's so obviously a forgery, and Dan Rather, claiming to be one of the world's brightest newsmen, most important newsmen, he tried to run this story as if it was a legitimate story, and of course it was totally bogus, and that was the end of Dan Rather's broadcast career. No longer would anybody take him seriously as a newscaster, and so we shouldn't either.
That was the good old days. He'd probably get paid for that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe, I'll bet you CBS is recruiting him. Hey, Dan, come back and help us write stories like you wrote back in the good old days. We need some more of those.
I know.
So anyway, Dan Rather, the last guy you'd want to be criticizing you for, what did you call it, irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country, from the father of irresponsible, one-sided news stories. Let's see. Let's drop down to clip 7. Got a couple of other topics. Let's go back to clip number 1. One of the issues, obviously we got Second Amendment issues rattling around in the wake of this Parkland shooting and all that kind of stuff, people talking about the Second Amendment. We talked about this some in the election in Alabama, because it was between Doug Jones and between Roy Moore. Remember, Roy Moore, at one of his campaign rallies, in order to demonstrate his fidelity and support of the Second Amendment, actually pulled out a pistol in the middle of the rally and waved it around on stage to show that he was a supporter of the Second Amendment. But remember, the GOP establishment, They believed these accusers, totally bogus accusers. Their stories just simply did not stand up to any kind of scrutiny, and but they believed them. And so Mitch McConnell and all the Republican leadership just threw Roy Moore to the sharks, just dumped him over the side of the boat and left him as shark bait. And so there were very few. I was about the only person I knew in media that was defending him, because I looked very carefully at the evidence of the investigators had found about the stories of these women. They just didn't line up. They were riddled with inconsistencies, riddled with holes, like the story about the mall that he was the mall had a policy he was never to be allowed on the mall. If any of the security guards saw him, they were to notify authorities, or they were to get rid of him, get him off the mall. Never happened. I mean, they interviewed personally the security heads of the mall during that time when this was supposed to have happened. They said nothing like that ever happened during the time that we were here. You know, we went over that in detail the other time. But anyway, back in the day, Doug Jones is now the senator from Alabama instead of Roy Moore because of Mitch McConnell. I'm going to lay this right at the feet of Mitch McConnell. We've got the 60-vote fake-a-buster threshold because of Mitch McConnell. We have Doug Jones as the senator from Alabama because of Mitch McConnell, because they just wouldn't go to bat for one of their own candidates. Now here's Doug Jones, and listen to what he says. This is a senator now that's in a position to vote on gun control legislation. Listen carefully to what he says.
We've got to get done what I think can be done right now. Let's reach across and within our own party to do those things that we can do. And that to me is where I want to focus. I really don't believe that a gun ban is feasible right now.
Now here's the important thing. The key word in that statement is the word feasible. In other words, Doug Jones does not say, I'm against a gun ban because it's a bad idea. I'm against a gun ban because it violates the Second Amendment. I'm against a gun ban because it violates the ability of the American citizens to protect themselves. He says, I'm against it because I don't believe it's feasible right now. By which he means, as soon as it's feasible, I am all in. As soon as it's got a chance to go somewhere, I'm going to start grabbing your guns with both of my hands. So again, we could have had a fierce advocate for the Second Amendment in this seat, but because of Mitch McConnell, we do not. So again, you know, realize how radical. Now we're talking here about what he calls it here, a gun ban. Don't believe a gun ban is feasible. He doesn't specify assault weapons or assault-type weapons. He's just talking about a ban on guns, and he's for it. He just doesn't think it's practical right now to get done. But as soon as it becomes practical, then Doug Jones is going to be all over that puppy. Now, I think we got one more soundbite I want to get in. This is Tucker Carlson, and this has to do with what's going on with the Russian investigation. One of the things that we are discovering now that's come out in the last couple of days is that apparently there was a lot of communication. The Trump administration was actually informed by the people who were doing the investigation on Donald Trump about the status of the investigation. You know, Barack Obama was just beating his chest and smugly saying, I stay out of that. They have to operate independently of the White House. I don't meddle in any kind of investigations. I don't want anything to do with that. I got to stay out of that because they got to do their operations independently. Now we're finding out that the White House was being briefed by the FBI during the early stages of the investigation of the Trump campaign. Byron York is on here. Ooh, let's hit it.
First of all, it's not really a new set of texts. That's one thing we learned, because this is not some new batch that just went over to Congress. Yes. These texts were released earlier, and they were redacted. They were blacked out. And remember what the Justice Department said to Congress. They said, well, Strzok and Page are having an affair. I mean, that's private stuff, personal stuff, so we're gonna black that out. And Congress said fine. And then they started looking at what was sent over, and there were things like meeting tomorrow in so-and-so's office, and the name would be blacked out, and they thought, well, that doesn't sound like personal stuff. And some of these names were names like Dennis McDonough, the chief of staff in the Obama White House. So that has made a number of members of the House Judiciary Committee very suspicious of what they're getting from Congress, from the Justice Department on this. Now, the bigger picture is they have been trying to find out in how far knowledge of things like the Trump dossier, the allegations in the Trump dossier, how far did that go up the chain in the Obama administration? Remember, we first thought it was just a few people at the FBI. Then it went higher in the FBI. Then it was the State Department. And now it looks like the White House, too.
If that's beginning to sound like a Watergate-sized scandal, you may be onto something. We'll be back with your phone calls, 888-589-8840.
Hello, I'm Gary Roby, host of Call to Worship, heard each Sunday on American Family Radio. This one-hour program will lead you in a special time of worship and praise. We will focus on God's Word, spoken and in music. Call to Worship has a different topic each week as we glorify God together. Be sure to join us at 5 a.m. Central each Sunday for a Call to Worship right here on American Family Radio.
You guys are doing a great work here, and I've seen lots of influences in my own life.
We're collecting stories of how God is using American Family Radio.
It inspires me to fight the good fight of faith.
Would you take a moment to share your story? These brief stories serve as big encouragement to those who partner with us financially and to those who are considering partnering with us. Phone 877-876-8893. That's 877-876-8893.
Hi, I'm Jan Harper. If you're a pastor's wife like me, you probably know what it feels like to live in a fishbowl. You know, that feeling like everybody is watching your every move?
The annual AFA Pastor and Wife Fishbowl Retreat is 3 days and 2 nights of relaxation and building relationships. The retreat is hosted by Pastor Bert Harper of Exploring the Word and his wife Jan. Special guest speakers will include AFR morning personality J.J. Jasper and his wife Melanie. The AFA Fishbowl Retreat is set for October 9 through 11 at the Linden Valley Conference Center in Linden, Tennessee. Call 800-326-4543 extension 300 for registration and information. That's 800-326-4543 extension 300. Or visit repairingthefoundations.net. Registration is limited to the first 35 couples.
Get out of the fishbowl and into the AFA Pastor and Wife Fishbowl Retreat. We'll see you there.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point. Brian Fisher.
Hi, welcome to this last segment of the program today, this brand new edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. We'll take your calls. Number to call if you want to be a part of our conversation is 888-589-8840. Hearing some rumblings that Merriam-Webster has redefined the assault rifle. I don't know exactly how they have redefined it, but apparently some pretty sober conservative websites are on that story, so we'll have to check that out. Remember, an assault rifle technically is a weapon that can fire automatic fire, where one trigger pull and you get a burst of rounds, not just one round per trigger pull. That's an assault rifle. Now, the AR-15, the Armalite rifle, AR stands for Armalite rifle, doesn't stand for assault rifle. But the AR-15, it looks like an assault rifle. It's kind of dressed up to look like one, but it's one bullet per trigger pull. It's not it's not automatic. It's semi-automatic, but so are most handguns in America. Unless it's a revolver, it's going to be virtually guaranteed to be a semi-automatic. So anyway, that's going on out there. We'll have to bring you some more information about that tomorrow. One unintended consequence, the CNN is just fawning all over JFK for his philandering. They're getting ready for this release of the Ted Kennedy movie about how he left Mary Jo Kopechne to die in the car when it went off the bridge. But they just love them some JFK. In fact, they call his sexual history, I think it's legendary. Yeah, that's the word they use. Legendary love life. This is JFK for fooling around on his wife. He was legendary. They're praising it. They're fawning all over JFK for being a womanizer. And so you wonder why the Stormy Daniels story is a nothing burger, why it has not dented Donald Trump's approval ratings, is we have been so desensitized by these hounds like JFK and Bill Clinton that they have lowered the threshold for the entire American people. They no longer get worked up over things that really ought to be a source of outrage and offense. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Mark in Marysville, Ohio. Mark, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. Karl Marx said that one of the things that him and his compatriots would do would be to accuse others of doing the very things you're doing while you are doing it to create confusion. And I think Dan Rather and these other people that are incensed against Sinclair Broadcasting, they're kind of flipping that. And, I mean, it's a form of hypocrisy for them to decry what Sinclair's doing. And we have a Sinclair broadcaster up here in Central Ohio, and I heard him say it Sunday night, and I thought, well, this is cool, but I know who they're aiming at. And now the backlash has started, but who cares? Let them rant. I heard some good news you've heard of the Weather Underground, right?
Right.
I heard some good news, really, from one of them that was in that years ago. There was a documentary done on them, and one of the people that was part of the leadership said that all leftist organizations eventually disintegrate because the people start turning on each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're seeing with the left. They don't want to admit it. They want to take. I mean, I'm sorry, but they've almost got the motto of "We're going to hell and we want to take you with us." That's basically their attitude. Yeah. If you can't get there, if we can't get there, you're not going there either. Yeah. And they basically want to destroy. And it's like, I really think they're imploding. Mm-hmm. On a totally unrelated note, I'm up here in Central Ohio. Heroin is all over the place. Ohio leads the nation in heroin overdoses.
Wow.
And I've rented a place where I'm at for about a year and a half. Didn't find out until 1 year ago that my landlord finally started doing background checks in January of 2017. Welcome to the 21st century, Mr. Landlord. But I would really appreciate prayers. There's some openings over here, and there's some criminals here that didn't have background checks. They do drugs. My name's Mark, Marysville, Ohio. Please pray for me. The past 2 years have been hellish. And I used to be in a cult years ago. God brought me out of it. But it feels worse over here at times than when I was in that cult.
Yeah. Well, Mark, let's have you hang on, and we'll invite our listening audience to pray for you along with me. Lord, we do pray for Mark. We pray that you would assign a battalion of warring angels to surround him and to protect him and to accompany him as a bodyguard for him, to shield him from all harm intended against him by the evil one. I pray that you would give him great wisdom, that you would give him strength and self-control where it's necessary. We pray that you would bring to light these practices that are going on in this area, that you would motivate law enforcement to do their job and administer justice in these situations. And we pray that in the end you would triumph. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, Mark, God's best to you, and keep us updated on how things go up there.
Thanks.
Okay, Mark in Marysville. Let's go to Phyllis in Georgia. Phyllis in Georgia, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi there, Brian. I just called because it's about the young kid and the boy and his mother.
Yeah.
Tasing him.
Uh-huh.
And the way you express that, Brian, for sure, when you use the word, what are you going to do? But I tell you, Brian, you make Christians sound really bad. This is what they do, Boy, are you for tasing children?
No, I said no. One of the explicit things I said, Phyllis, I'm not defending the use of a taser. I said that quite directly, quite explicitly. I'm not advocating the use of tasers, not supporting it. I said that quite explicitly. So let me ask you, Phyllis, what would your counsel to this woman be if she has a son that is refusing to respond to a direction that the child is receiving from her mother, a parent who has God-given authority over the children that are under her roof. What is she supposed to do?
Brian, this goes back much further than that. It's obviously she has not been a loving parent. You have to love your child. You have to talk to them. And, of course, spanking is appropriate. But this comes way before that. And you have to have some sort of, this comes way before that. I'm not for tasing, Mr. Fisher. I just want to tell you that.
But Phyllis, hold on. I just told you repeatedly I'm not for tasing either. I didn't defend it. I said I'm not defending it. So we're on the same page when it comes to tasering. What I'm asking you is, what should this woman have done?
Okay. I understand what you're asking. As I said before any sort of discipline, that means the child has already been out of control because the parent has not done the appropriate things in teaching the child, having some sort of just a relationship and understanding when she says something, she really means it in a way. It's just that she's gotten lost control of her child. And now she went to something extreme.
Well, Phyllis, for number one, we're ignorant about what this woman has done in the past. She might have been an outstanding parent. She might have administered discipline in a way that was appropriate, and we don't know. Maybe the child is just incorrigible. Because every parent of a teenager knows that they just get attitudes sometimes. And so my question to you, without knowing any more than we know now, I mean, I don't know what that woman is supposed to do today, Phyllis. What is she supposed to do with her son today, who won't respond to a direct appeal to get out of bed and get dressed to go to church? What's she supposed to do today?
Brian, but I've already said before, she's already lost control. Then, now she goes to
Phyllis,
something very extreme.
But Phyllis, so she just let him do whatever he wants then?
Of course not.
Well, then,
when you're a parent, there is authority.
Phyllis, what's she supposed to do?
I understand what you're asking, but for that question, for me to answer that, I'm coming to this place. Yes, she has authority, but that authority comes in love. That authority comes in love and in ways that you're not going to. Your child will respect you, and you want to have control in your family, but not in a way of when your child is not obeying you or listening to you. That means you've done something. You're doing something wrong already. Something she's lost control. Now, the answer to your question, I don't know, but certainly not tasing.
Okay, well, that's fine. Hey, Phyllis, that's my question. See, we agree that tasering is not a good idea. Nobody's advocating tasering, but nobody has come up with a recommendation for this woman about what she is supposed to do. And I hear you're talking about love and counsel, all that kind of stuff. That's fine, but that's not going to solve her problem. She can't go off to counseling and then come back and get her kid out of bed for Easter service. So what I'm talking about is, what is she supposed to do when this happens right in her home? All right, we'll all keep thinking about that and maybe come up with an answer one of these days. All right, let's go to Julian in West Virginia. Julian, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Good afternoon, Brian.
Howdy.
I called Target, and I suggested to them that they mount a boycott against AFA. If you can do it, they can do it.
And what'd they say?
You were mad at Home Depot because you claimed that they should stay out of the culture wars.
Right.
And I think you should too.
So you think the Target ought to boycott us?
Huh?
You think Target should boycott us?
I think Target should get together with other businesses, yes, and mount a boycott against against the publishers that publish your silly books.
Okay, Julian. So you're saying that boycotts are actually okay? Boycotts are good. So why do you have a problem with us boycotting Target? You're here defending boycotts, saying they're good. We ought to have more of them, and here AFA's doing it, and you're climbing our frame. I don't get it. All right. Thanks, Julian, for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go for the last call of the day to Barbara in Dallas, Texas. Barbara, got 30 seconds. Hit me with your best shot.
Yes, I wanted to pray for the president that God will give him wisdom regarding what to do regarding the border.
Amen.
I had a thought, and I just wanted, if he would shut down the sanctuary cities and stop funding them. I read on the internet that there would be $225 million available.
Yep, there are a number of ways to fund that wall, and that would be one of them. We got to defund those sanctuary cities. That's it for today. God bless you. See you back here tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio. You can stay up to date with the latest in the culture war from the news team at onenewsnow.com. Our goal is to present the day's news from a biblical perspective. OneNewsNow.com not only features the latest breaking stories from across the U.S. and around the world, but also news of the challenges that Christians face today. Bookmark